how has the role of a man in today's society changed or evolved compared to when you were young or when you were growing up?
Okay, two things. I think that fundamentally it hasn't changed. I think probably operationally it probably has. I think the fundamentals of the biblical principle that we adopted in our relationship, sex before marriage being a no-no, that hasn't changed. But a lot of our people nowadays, they don't really think that is a key issue. Oh, we're going to get married, so let's do it anyway. That's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. Because suppose you don't marry her. Suppose something comes up and everything falls down and you've already sold your soul to each other. That creates an issue. I think being faithful to God, you'll be faithful to your wife or your man, your husband, you know. I think the two go hand in hand.
Okay.
And you know, what I always promised to God was that I will be faithful to you. And if I'm faithful to you, I know you'll be faithful to me.
Yeah.
And, you know, the biggest sins at that time in church was fornication and adultery. That's the biggest sins, you know, in the world. Don't commit fornication, don't commit adultery. But I think I didn't see the relevance of that statement or them putting as a preeminence. But when you have sex before marriage, I think it was Jesus that said that if you have sex with a prostitute, you become one with her.
With her, yep.
Right? And what happens is we mention the fact about soul ties. And the soul tying together is done in the act of sex, where flesh meets flesh and makes a tie. Not only flesh meets flesh, because before flesh meets flesh, you have to say, yes, I'll accept you into me, into my life, into my body.
Yeah.
And I think it's that spiritual acceptance and acknowledgement or allowing that person to be received into me that makes that tie in your soul. It's a spiritual connection. It's a spiritual connection where you have said, I'm happy for you to come into me. Now, just going totally off on a tangent, they always say this, it's totally unbelief, but they were saying about a vampire. A vampire cannot enter your house
Unless you invite them.
Unless you invite them. Similar thing with this sex.
I like that tangent. It's true.
Literally, when you give permission, the instant you give permission, yes, you can come in.
Yeah.
Sexually.
Yeah.
You've tied yourself.
You've tied yourself up.
Spiritually, from a soulish level. And that ties first before you do the physical act.
Yeah.
And that's why, I think, that's why that Jesus said, if you lust after a woman, you've committed adultery in your heart. And that's saying, I will allow you to come in. Just what I'm saying.
I see that.
It's tying yourself on a spiritual level before you do the physical act. You've got to give her the permission to come in. That's where the deed is done. Spiritually, you've tied them. You know, even you're talking on the telephone. You know, you love this one. You know, the old, you talk on the telephone. You just fall asleep talking. You wake up talking on the phone. That soul coming out through your verbal speech. That's called verbal intercourse.
Jeez. Okay.
Verbal intercourse.
Okay.
And that is when you get tied verbally because you love that person, or that person comes into you through that
Through the
verbal
word.
connection.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why that quickly leads on to sexual
To the rest of it.
intercourse. Yeah. So there's a lot of scriptures that really backs up that theory in terms of soul ties and how those soulish connections are made on a spiritual level.